The story of the Bismarck. The story of the Bismarck is a dramatic saga of triumph, tragedy, and relentless pursuit that took place over just a few short days in May 1941. The sinking of this formidable German battleship during World War II was one of the most gripping naval events of the conflict. A high-stakes chase across the Atlantic that culminated in the destruction of the pride of Nazi Germany's Kriegsmarine, the birth of a giant. Launched in 1939, the Bismarck was a beast of a ship. At over 41,000 tons and armed with 8 15-inch guns, it was one of the most powerful and feared battleships ever built. Germany envisioned the Bismarck as a key weapon in their naval strategy to disrupt Allied shipping in the Atlantic. The German Navy, Kriegsmarine, sought to break the supply lines between North America and Great Britain, upon which Britain relied for survival. The Bismarck, together with other warships, was tasked with this vital mission. The Bismarck was a modern engineering marvel. Fast, heavily armored, and bristling with firepower. It was designed to outrun or outfight any ship in the Royal Navy. But despite its strength, the Bismarck's mission was fraught with danger. The Atlantic was closely patrolled by the Royal Navy, and Britain's warships vastly outnumbered those of Germany. The mission begins. In May 1941, Admiral Gunther Lütjens was given command of the Bismarck for Operation Regenbogen, a mission to break into the Atlantic and wreak havoc on Allied shipping. Accompanied by the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, the Bismarck set sail from the Baltic port of Gotenhafen, now Gdynia, Poland, and passed into the North Sea. Lütjens planned to pass through the Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland to reach the open waters of the North Atlantic. From there, the Bismarck would be able to attack British merchant convoys bringing critical supplies to the United Kingdom. The Royal Navy was immediately alerted to the Bismarck's departure. The British Admiralty, aware of the threat posed by the massive battleship, scrambled to intercept it. The HMS Hood, the pride of the Royal Navy and one of the largest warships in the world, along with the brand-new battleship HMS Prince of Wales, were dispatched to intercept the Bismarck in the Denmark Strait. The Battle of the Denmark Strait. At dawn on May 24, 1941, the two British warships sighted the Bismarck and Prinz Eugen. The stage was set for one of the most dramatic naval engagements of the war. As the two forces closed in, the British ships opened fire. The Hood, with her elegant lines and illustrious history, was the pride of the Royal Navy. But she had a fatal flaw. Her deck armor was not thick enough to protect against plunging fire from the Bismarck's 15-inch shells. Within minutes of the battle's beginning, disaster struck. A shell from the Bismarck hit the Hood's magazine, causing a massive explosion. The Hood was torn apart and sank in less than 3 minutes, killing all but 3 of its 1,418 crew members. The loss of the Hood was a devastating blow to British morale, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill famously issued the order, "Sink the Bismarck." The Prince of Wales, although damaged in the exchange, managed to escape. However, it had inflicted some damage on the Bismarck. One of its shells had struck the battleship's fuel tanks, causing an oil leak. This would ultimately prove critical to the Bismarck's fate. The hunt begins. With the Hood sunk and the Prince of Wales withdrawing, the Bismarck seemed to have the upper hand. However, Lütjens now faced a difficult choice. The damage to the Bismarck's fuel tanks meant that the battleship could not continue its mission in the Atlantic without risking running out of fuel. Lütjens decided to head for the safety of Nazi-occupied France, where the Bismarck could undergo repairs. But the British were relentless. The loss of the Hood galvanized the Royal Navy into action, and every available warship and aircraft in the North Atlantic was ordered to find and destroy the Bismarck. Despite the battleship's massive size, tracking it in the vast Atlantic was no easy task. The Bismarck briefly disappeared from radar and radio contact, leaving the British uncertain of its position. A breakthrough came on May 26, when a British reconnaissance aircraft, a Catalina flying boat, spotted an oil slick in the Atlantic. Following the trail, they discovered the Bismarck, still making its way towards France. The HMS Ark Royal, a British aircraft carrier, was dispatched to launch an airstrike. The fatal blow. The Ark Royal launched a squadron of antiquated ferry swordfish biplanes, equipped with torpedoes. Despite their slow speed and frailty, these swordfish torpedo bombers would prove to be the Bismarck's undoing. As the aircraft descended on the Bismarck, the battleship opened up with its anti-aircraft guns, sending flak into the air. However, the slow-moving biplanes were difficult to target, and many survived the onslaught. One torpedo hit the Bismarck on the port side, but the critical blow came when another torpedo struck the Bismarck's stern, jamming its rudder. With the rudder jammed, the Bismarck could no longer steer and was left circling in the water, helpless and unable to escape. Now, the British ships closed in for the kill. The final battle. In the early hours of May 27, 1941, the Royal Navy's battleships HMS King George V and HMS Rodney caught up with the crippled Bismarck. The British ships opened fire, and soon a furious barrage of shells rained down on the Bismarck. The German battleship, despite being surrounded and outgunned, fought back valiantly. Its crew continued to fire its remaining guns, but they were hopelessly outmatched. After hours of bombardment, the Bismarck was a burning wreck. Its superstructure had been reduced to twisted metal, and most of its guns had been silenced. Despite the punishment it had taken, the Bismarck still refused to sink. The British battleships continued firing, and the cruiser HMS Dorsetshire launched torpedoes to deliver the final blows. At around 10:39 a.m. on May 27th, the Bismarck finally began to sink. Whether it was scuttled by its crew or sank due to the British attack remains a subject of debate. Of the Bismarck's crew of over 2,200 men, only 114 survived. The rest went down with the ship, marking the end of one of the most formidable warships ever built. Aftermath and legacy. The sinking of the Bismarck was a major victory for the Royal Navy and a symbol of British determination during World War II. The destruction of the Hood had shocked the nation, but the relentless pursuit and eventual sinking of the Bismarck restored British morale and demonstrated the power of the Royal Navy. The battle also signaled a turning point in naval warfare. The days of battleships ruling the seas were coming to an end, as aircraft carriers and air power played an increasingly crucial role in modern warfare. The Bismarck, despite its size and strength, was vulnerable to the tiny swordfish biplanes that had crippled it. In 1989, the wreck of the Bismarck was discovered by Dr. Robert Ballard, the same oceanographer who had found the Titanic. Lying at a depth of about 4,800 meters, 15,700 feet, in the Atlantic, the wreck serves as a haunting reminder of the ferocity of naval warfare and the tragic loss of life that accompanied the Bismarck's final voyage. The story of the Bismarck remains one of the most compelling naval dramas in history, a tale of a mighty warship brought low by determination, skill, and the changing tides of warfare. These films have been created to highlight the powerful features of Polyspeaks for You, South Africa's leading accessibility software. Learn more at www.polyspeaks4u.co.za. We invite you to support this meaningful dyslexic initiative, crafted and developed by an individual who personally understands the challenges of dyslexia.